I haven't traveled very much outside of the United States since I've had my surgery. I've traveled to see my children and some other scenic things, right? But the food is fairly predictable uh, because I speak the language. I know where I am. I know what the regional specialties are. Uh, and so I can set my expectations appropriately and have a plan on how to eat. Okay. Because for me, I find that if I go into a meal or a situation unplanned, I'm going to get wrecked because I want more of that, and oh, give me a bite of cheesecake. I have absolutely no self control if I don't have a plan, uh, and that's why like if I know I'm going to a restaurant, I'll always look it up first and scan the menu to make sure that there's a couple, three things that I'm interested in, and I kind of go in with a list, if you will. Um, have either of you had much experience traveling to places unknown, um, where you just didn't even know what to expect with the food, or places even locally or within the United States or North America, but locally where wow, you just really struggled with food?
My I have a son that lives in Korea, and we travel to Korea for extended periods of time, 6, 7 weeks at a time. We're going to start living over there about half the year.
Oh,
So, yeah, I've been through Asia a lot, and I've actually found that now, if you're in Tokyo, Seoul, Bangkok, you'll have a McDonald's, a Burger King, a KFC, and a Dunkin' Donuts on
mm,
every corner, and a
mhm.
Starbucks, two on every corner. But you don't, there's so many other options. And if you're in a city or an area that isn't Bangkok or Tokyo, the restaurants that I've frequented or stopped in on or looked interesting, um, you if you're a happy tourist and you like, I'll just say it this way, if you're not an ugly American guy, where's the cheeseburger on
Yep.
this menu? And you can speak any of the language or somebody speaks some English, you most of the food isn't um, prepackaged, right? So it was alive or growing this morning. It's on your plate this afternoon. Um, they love to cook. I mean, I'll just do this for you, just do that for you. You can eat as well as anywhere, maybe better. Um, I think. Now, maybe if you were in your first year post-op, it might be very difficult just because of limitations that your body hasn't. I couldn't eat a tomato for several years. So, but yeah, I think traveling um, is, I've actually got in better routines, both eating and exercise while traveling because I don't have as many distractions. You know what I mean? I'm sightseeing or yeah, I'm meeting people, but it's so much easier to compartmentalize okay, my nutritional and my exercise needs. It's still got to be done upstairs. You still got to make it happen. But my experiences, and now I'm talking Asia, Europe primarily. I've never been to South America, Australia, and it's basically Canada and the United States. So I don't know what it's like to be in Africa or South America, but yeah, that's my experience. I think if you, again, first year where you're not sure about your own capabilities and all that, it'll be tough. But afterwards, if you've mastered any about intentional eating, intentional living, or like I call it, design and election, I think you'll be surprised how well you can do overseas.
So that's a brilliant point that you bring up. It's that being present, it's being conscious in your day. You're not just habituated. Like you during the commercial, you walk over to the fridge, you open it up, and you just grab that thing that you knew was on the second shelf. You didn't remember what it was, but you knew you put it there, right? Um, and you're not as present because you just fall back on those habits and those patterns. And so it sounds to me like a couple things. One, the design being present, actively involved in what you're doing, whether it's eating, exercising, just go into a museum, right? Just be
Right.
part of it. Um, and then being aware that you do have limitations. Like I know I can't eat heavy dairy, like cheesecake. I love cheesecake. Oh man, I could
Right.
just lay down on a bed of cheesecake and I would not get up. But but I'll tell you what, two bites in, next hour and a half, I'm in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I just can't. Uh, and like your uh, tomatoes, that it's so funny that you said that because I'm diabetic. And so for like 7 years, I never ate a pancake. And I love pancakes. And I was always so jealous when we go to the restaurant. You get these just, these hubcap
Right.
sized pancakes. I'm
Right.
like, I'd do that, right? Uh, so post surgery, I'm like, oh, I don't know, 5 months post surgery. And so I was back on soft solids, right? Um, and I went to a restaurant with my folks, and one of the options was like you could get some toast, or you could get a biscuit or something. And bread is just like the wrong thing for a bariatric patient. It doesn't matter. It's just a filler. There's very, very little nutritional value, and it's going to prevent you from eating the things that your body needs, like protein.
Mhm.
So I thought, okay, I'm going to get this pancake, and it was a side pancake, so it was only about this big. Yeah, I took that first bite, and I was in heaven. It was like the first pancake I'd had in 8 years, and I was like, oh, I am going to so. And uh-oh.
Oh,
Man, I tailed it to the bathroom, and I was in there for 20 minutes throwing up.
mm.
So I've had one
Well,
bite of pancake in the last 11 years.
have you tried those protein pancakes?
So I haven't the Kodiak and I'm not endorsing a brand or anything, but I've
Right.
seen like the Kodiak. I just haven't tried it because if I'm going to have protein, I
Yeah. Well,
just
that's
go
true.
straight for it, right? I'm
Right.
just going to have protein. I'm going to, have well, chicken fried steak is my weakness.
Put a pig in that blanket.
Yeah. Hey, great idea. But Jeff, I have to imagine that you deal with nutrition issues like that, where people said, or where you as part of your role are wanting people to develop diets that are healthy and appropriate for them, but that they struggle with that. So, what's been your experience, and how do you guide people on that?
A lot of my clients are like early on, but 1 year, and I think Bill made the statement that I think and about the tomato, and you made the statement about the pancake. And to me, it's like I almost feel since it's a new life, right? You're trying to build this new life and new habits around eating. Is to almost, if you can, this is um, take some time before you start traveling, figure out what can and can't eat, right? So it may be that you just haven't had a time to discover because everything changes, right? Your whole gut,
Right.
your everything changes. Probably your biome. I know some things about gut biome changes. Your taste buds change, and they continue to change for the first 6 to 8 months. And I think for the most part, I think it's discovering what you can and can't um, eat is probably a better way to, and at that point in time, then you can sort of look at the overall cultural menu of where you're going. Like for Bill, it's always Asia. If fish is not if fish is going to feel a little bad, maybe it's like, meh, you may need to figure out how to work around that a little bit. It's not, I wouldn't think it'd be impossible, but Asia's known for a lot of different kinds of seafood. Um, if you're going to Argentina, it's all steak, it's all red meat. So,
On a
so
sword.
yeah, exactly. So if you're going to a South American country, I would think you got to figure out how you're going to eat around a lot of meat. So for me, it would be just take that first year or 6 to 8 months after you've healed a little bit and sort of figure out what works best for you. And, for some of my clients, they've just, some of them will be, they say, I don't want to be like this, but sometimes I just got to bring my own food to a restaurant when I'm overseas and it just feels weird and awkward, but I want to travel and I don't want to, not travel just because I can't eat tomatoes or pancakes. So, it may be one of those things, as long as you do it in a subtle way that's not offensive, then sometimes just having your own food there. And it's not a great solution, but it's a solution.
So
Well,
much of overseas in Asia, at least the menus, if you will, or choosing your food, it's all a la carte. So you don't have to, and the portion sizes are much smaller. So it's much easier to have a full meal if you I'm full meaning multiple options at one time and not overeat.
one of the things that I was just thinking Bill, when you said you can go into a restaurant and if you're a happy tourist, right, and you're respectful, that's
Right.
what it is. You just need to be respectful. Okay. Anyway, so you're respectful, and they're willing to go off menu for you. They know how
Mhm.
to cook, and I found I love bok choy, especially like baby bok choy, fried up, and
Yeah.
I was still in my first year and I got some bok choy and I was like, oh, I'm going to do that. Man, that sesame oil, it
Mhm.
wrecked me,
Oh, really?
just wrecked me. And like canola didn't, olive didn't, but I use sesame oil and there's just something about it, right? The phenols and the other things that are in it. Um,
Mm.
I can eat it today, but I'm 3 years post. But um, that first year, I was really shocked because it hurt. Uh, so then I started to cook bok choy in just water and salt. Oh man, it was good. Still love it.
Not
I
bad.
think it's one of the things you get to discover, just to change a little bit. You sort of, I like what you did. You discovered a different way to actually enjoy the same foods. And, maybe there's a way to do that too when you're traveling, a certain way. Or the Americanized, I'm assuming that the viewers are American, but the Americanized versions of some foreign foods aren't what the foreign food is actually, how it's actually cooked, right? So sometimes, it may be that I can't eat like this. It's like you may not eat the American version of Chinese food or the American version of Mexican food or whatever it is. So it may be one of those things where it's like getting to the place, you may be surprised at what you can eat because it's just a different way than how America has presented that food to you.
Yeah, and
So
I think Bill has had a good point too that, what is on your plate right now was either it was still in the ground this morning, and it's so much fresher and so much better for you and has so much better nutritional value. And then depending upon how it's prepared. Like I said, I started cooking bok choy in just water and then just putting salt on the end. I didn't use soy sauce because that was a little heavy for me. Um, I can eat it today, but it was tough for me then. Uh, so it's interesting. I guess what I'm hearing is that it's really about just planning ahead, thinking, being present, having a design, and executing against that design. And you can do that pretty much anywhere. You just need to do it, right?
And the being prepared that way in a tactical, practical way is obviously setting yourself up to be able to succeed at your goal, to eat well and do what you want to do. But one additional thing is the mindset. Richard, I think you highlighted this. Maybe or this is what I heard. I was eating bok choy with this sesame oil, and I loved it. But then after surgery, I tried it. It wouldn't work. Now, how many times have I heard a weight loss surgery patient say, "When will I be able to do that again? Eat this again." And I always think of that as kind of adopting the mentality of I had to give up. I have to say no. I can't, I'm not allowed. As opposed to Richard said, hey, I found a new way to enjoy a food I like. So you're not trying to go back, you're going forward with this. And that mentality part is so, because how many social media posts do you see? When will I be able to eat a whole pizza again?
Well,
Oh, why would you ever want to eat a whole pizza? All of
it's what
that.
got you there in the first place.
And I think I'm going to give people credit that if they really stopped and thought about it, they
Right.
go, okay, silly. But the point that should be made is that's the time when you have to grab your mind and spin that sucker around and find the positive, find an affirmation of what you want to do, claim that goal, claim the victory, and do the march. So I'm not being limited of what I can eat. I'm choosing a new, better way to do it. And I have the power. That mentality part. Anyway, I get all charged up just thinking about it. But with that, you can overcome. Yeah, I don't like not being able to pound a couple of gin and tonics sometime because I'd like to party with. But you know what? I like the fact that I am in charge of what, when, where, and why.
Mm.
I have a drink if I have a drink, or why I don't when I don't. Whole different mentality. Anyway, again, I'm preaching. But yeah, congratulations, Richard. I think that's exactly you. It's nothing's taken away. You have new options. Go explore them.
Yeah. And I think that, Jeff, I like your point about waiting a few months, 6, 8, actually like 12 to 14 was my experience, but everybody's journey is different, right? And unfortunately, I had some pretty early setbacks because I had my surgery in July, and then I went to Christmas with a family. They are Italian, so big, and they are Catholic, and they celebrate hard. And so I mean, there was so much just amazing food, and I was still too close to my surgery, right? Because I was only 5 months post, or 4 months post, and I just ate too much stuff, all the wrong stuff, and I just did some bad things to myself inside. So it took me a couple extra months to recover. So just be
Yeah.
aware that that can happen because we fall into those habits, right? It's like, why can't I eat the whole pizza? Uh, but what I'm hearing is take your time in the beginning, explore what you can and can't eat before you're out in a place where you don't have a choice, right? You either have fried chicken or you have fried chicken, and both of those are going to wreck you. Um, and it can be pretty tough. So funny story. So I went on a storm chasing tour, which uh, was last May, and it was down. We started out in Oklahoma City, and then eventually went all the way down to San Antonio, and then back up the Texas border and into Kansas and Nebraska, and so we were on the road like 16 to 18 hours a day driving, and there's where we stopped was where we could get gas, and that's what we had to eat.
Ah,
So yeah, so it was rough. Oh my gosh. Plus then,
That doesn't sound fun at all.
well, it was
Food
fun.
side.
It was fun from the perspective of storm chasing, right? But the food side of it, you're right. And the problem was I knew that if I ate that, we'd be stopping every 15 to 30 minutes so I could go to the bathroom. So I just wound up mostly just drinking water. Um,
Well,
and an occasional protein drink that I knew my system could digest fairly well. But something like that, man, I was so out of my element. And that's really the genesis of what I was thinking here was like when you're someplace where you don't have a choice, no matter how good your plan is, how do you adapt? How quickly can you adapt? Or do you just go full on misery? You know, it worked out pretty well for me though. I was happy.
that's good. I think, yeah, it's one of those things you have to sort of, like I said, you have to adapt to that. I think in your case, hitting the protein shake when you could, um, is a good way to go with that, just as a basic. It may not be the greatest thing in the world, but it's at least better than a bag of potato chips and a soda or whatever is available at a gas station. My question to two of you is, you both talked about how you couldn't eat something, like you couldn't eat um, sesame oil, and Bill, you couldn't eat tomatoes for a while. And you were talking about, when do I get back to it again? Which is a valid statement of maybe you don't need to get back to it. Maybe you need to figure out another path. But you both also made the statement that you now can eat them. So my question to you is, when did you get the courage to start discovering that you could eat those foods again? And how did you get back into them? Because to me, it's like, if it's like, oh, I ate this and it made me feel like total dog shit, why would I want to try it again? But both of you have decided that you did try again. So what's that about?
Richard.
Oh yeah. So specifically around the sesame oil, right? So a lot of Asian cooking includes sesame oil, right? And sometimes it's just impossible to get away from it. And so there are certain dishes that I just crave because the aroma and then the taste and just kind of all my childhood memories of going out to these Chinese restaurants with my parents, just all of these magical things that are sitting on a plate and it just happens to look like bok choy, right? But I want to go back and I want to experience that. Now, I'm really happy that I'm eating it with the salt in the water. So I thought, I didn't have to go anywhere. There was nobody else in the house, so I wasn't going to bother anyone. And I thought, let's see how this goes. So I put a couple drops of sesame oil on and it was okay. And I loved it. And then the next time I put a couple extra more drops on it and then maybe a few more drops. And then I would get to the point, like, let's say it was 27 drops and it was like, uh-oh, should have stuck with 25. So, because of the desire and the craving for that food and the fact that it's ubiquitous with Asian cooking, I didn't want to deny myself that because it meant that whenever I went out to an Asian restaurant, I had to order off the menu because everything was going to come chock-a-block with sesame oil. Plus, I love the flavor. So it wasn't one of those things that's like taking iron. I mean, with taking iron supplements, they just tear me up. But you have to. And so you kind of got to plan for it. It's not something I want to do. It's something I need to do. Sesame oil is not that way. I really, really want to do it. And so I found a way, right? I evolved. So what's your story, Bill?
Well, tomatoes are very similar in that they're in a lot of things. Tomato sauce, tomato paste is in obviously Italian cooking, but I mean everything has. So the the first the first thing I tried to eat when I could expand was a salad, and it had a tomato, and I went right for the tomato. It was a slice, and it did me in. And I noticed when I had any tomato sauce or anything, same thing. So tomato, and it was within seconds, down and up.
Mm,
But like you say, it's in many, many things. And I knew sooner or later, I assumed that part of it was just my body healing, that eventually so Jeff, to answer your question in a way, I always assumed that it was a temporary problem,
mhm.
um, because it wasn't related. I wasn't eating 9 tomatoes, so it was a volume problem. I wasn't throwing them in real fast, so it wasn't a speed problem. It was probably just the acid in my stomach and it wasn't healed enough or, that kind of thing. Again, not being a doctor, but like Richard, I wanted this, so I kept every now and then trying, take that little piece of tomato, eat it. Oops, not yet. And then one day, no problem. And that allowed me to open up. I mean, it really did me a favor. It restricted the temptations for a long time. Hey, Bill, you want some lasagna? No. and whatnot. So it got me having to work around that. And then once I had learned that habit, it said, okay, now you can have a tomato. Well, I actually think I benefited from that fact. But, that's just me looking on the bright side, I guess. But today, tomatoes, I love them. Can eat them all day long. I grow them.
Two really cool things that you just talked about, Bill. The last one is that you know that you're going to get back to some of the things, but it's going to be more intentional, more thoughtful, more planful, right? That somebody says, "Hey, Bill, you want some lasagna?" It's like, "Oh, there's tomatoes in that. I can't do that right now." So I just need to be aware of the things that agree with me, right? But
Right.
the other thing that I'm hearing, like the underlying story, is about recovery. That as we go through this journey, things will change, and it's not a I hope that most people don't have the reaction of, why did I do this? I can't eat tomatoes. Why did I do this? I can't eat a whole pizza. Why did I do this? And understand that the opportunity that they've been given and the tool that they've accepted are going to move them forward. And yeah, things are going to change. I mean, when when you go from a hammer to a screwdriver, your world changes, right? The way you look at the world, the way that you fix the world, the way that you approach the world, it changes, but it doesn't mean that you're never going back to the hammer.
Right.
It's just going to be a different hammer, or use it differently with more intention. And so I love that story of knowing that eventually I'm going to heal, I'm recovering. Um, but for
Yeah.
me, like, it's been 3 years of recovery, and not as intense at first, right? At first, like, I mean, I was afraid to eat oatmeal the first time. Because I'd been on a liquid diet for what, 4 weeks or something, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have some oatmeal. What's gonna
Right.
happen? What's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? Um, and so that was a really bizarre thing, because I never thought about it. Like, I would get up in the morning, I would open up the instant oatmeal, do that, and while I'm getting dressed, I just have a bowl and I'd be eating it, not even thinking about it. And and now I'm looking at every little one of those little oats and thinking, which one's gonna get me?
Right.
Oh, fortunately, it didn't.
Yeah. Things change. I mean, I actually thank you for both of you on that, because that has always been a question that I've had where people are sort of further out and they'll say what they used to not be able to, and now they can eat a certain thing. And that can go the other way. I knew one client from years ago that said she loved cake. Like, chocolate cake was her go-to. She'd always buy a chocolate cake on Friday and eat it over the weekend. And so obviously that didn't happen after surgery. And I asked her about it. She goes, "I just don't eat it anymore. I just don't, because I don't even want to. I don't even want to test the system to see if I can." So it goes both ways. It's sort of like, get back into the stuff you want to eat, but also that just means that things change. Right? You could, over the course of time, you may become more tolerant of cake or ice cream or whatever that is. Um, so it's not always going to be. You may not have dumping in 4 or 5 years that you in year one and two. Um, and that to understand that it's there, it's a correctional thing, but it's your body will adapt.
So
Right.
it's an interesting thing that I just thought about, like with the cake versus tomatoes versus sesame oil, is that like tomatoes and sesame oil, as we've talked about, are in everything or most things. So they're really unavoidable unless you're very, very intentional and really know what you're eating. Whereas chocolate cake, yeah, yeah, you have to walk over to it, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't come to you. You have to walk over to it. And like with me with cheesecake, oh, I love cheesecake, but I can't eat it at all. And so now I just go by and like look at it and think, oh, that would be so good. And then just walk on. It's like, okay, but you know what? I'm not deprived of anything else. I still can have my half a cookie, if that's what I want. But it just changes. And I think that for things like tomatoes and sesame oil and whatever anybody else reacts to, I have a niece who reacts to strawberries. Um, is that you want to keep testing the boundary because you want to measure your progress.
Right.
Mhm.
And progress is important because if we get stuck, when we plateau or we start regaining weight, oh my gosh, it just feels so bad. Um, so we want to keep kind of testing the boundaries of how am I improving? How am I continuing to progress in this journey? And it doesn't end. I mean, whether you're 3 weeks out, 3 years out, or almost 15 years, I mean, it doesn't end.
I think it's true for a lot of aspects of life, but you have a better life if you're curious. Just ask questions about
Mhm.
life, about yourself, about your environment, about why I do what I do. Um, the people that seem to think that this is something you do and then it takes over, it it manages you or it manages your life. It doesn't work that way. It's it's no different than being given any power tool. It's dangerous if you don't know how to use it. It's a tool to produce artwork if you know how to use it. It's like that. So yeah, you have to be curious. You have to dig. You have to ask questions
Yeah.
of yourself, of everything.
Well, and I think it goes back to where it was very first started. It's like when you're the happy tourist, it's a completely different experience. And I think that as people progress through their bariatric journey, if they're doing it with curiosity and patience, and they understand that things take time. And oh, by the way, having bariatric surgery isn't going to fix your life.
Right.
It's just another tool in the toolbox that you can now include to achieve those goals that you wanted to achieve. But yeah, I think that that's a great point, is that you've got to have that curiosity and you've got to approach it with a positive attitude, knowing that, yeah, it's not going to be easy. And the answers sometimes are pretty hard to come by.
Hmm.
But that's why you get a support group. That's why you have podcasts like this. That's why you have people who you can call and say, I'm struggling, or hey, I'm feeling really great today. You want to go share half a cupcake?
Right.
Oh,
I think that's
yeah.
I think that's great. I think that being curious is a good part of the whole thing. You know, I like that. I like that aspect. Sorry, but Richard, I don't mean to interrupt what you were
No,
saying.
no, I'm just pondering that because that actually really touches me. The be curious, right?
Yeah.
I think that that's kind of the whole theme of what we've been talking about today is, be curious and experiment and get out and explore. You are not limited by your bariatric surgery.
As a matter of fact, you're expanded by it.
Mhm. You just need to
Yeah.
find those things that you can do, and that may be new, right? You can't go back to your old habits for the most part. I mean, you can't go back to eating a whole pizza. You can't go back to chugging beers, right? It isn't going to happen. But that's okay. There are other things you can do that will be just as satisfying. You just don't know them yet.
Right. Yeah, and to get something different, you have to do something different. So the quest for how do I get back to where I was is really just a question of how can I live that lifestyle that got me to 400 pounds again. You can't. You can't. Um, the deal you made, the contract you signed, was in effect you're going to change. And because you've come to a point where you don't want to do it the way you're doing it anymore, I'll make a deal. I'm going to change my life and have a different result. Well, that's the deal. And life will hold you to that. I mean, there's no emotion in it. You haven't, you haven't made the change. You don't get to change. It's that simple.
Right.
Yeah. It's a great point. I think that may be a good phrase, a good place to end this because now it gives you time to think about what's your contract say to you and how are you living that contract
What
or how
change do
aren't
you,
you
yeah.
right?
What change do you want and what are you going to change to achieve that?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a great
Great
place to
point, Paul.
stop. So
Life's not
thanks,
going to
Phil.
give it to you. That's for
Nope,
sure.
not at all. Not in any way. So, but you can take it from it.
Right.
So yeah. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it again.
Hey, thanks,
Wonderful.
Phil.
And
Hey,
Thanks, Jeff. Always wonderful.
thanks. Talk to you soon.
all right.